then, what they do is they organize the services that you're not there, which is upwards of 40 a year or so, which is a lot. And, well, maybe not quite 40, but 35 or so, 30, 35.
And they support me.
So when you're preaching, do they also do like chalice
lightings, readings, depending on how many readings I'll have for a service and things. So they stand. And we have a wonderful group of musicians and artists in the congregation that always want to participate. So they email me, can I do something?
Yeah, that's nice. Wow.
Yeah, it's nice. You know, sometimes, hey, I get paid to do this. Let me do what I'm paid to do. But it is wonderful. They take great ownership with their worship experience.
Okay. Okay. So in Albuquerque, we have the worship team in Albuquerque has 3 basic responsibilities. And it's interesting, no matter what the sizes, I'm hearing these same things. The first responsibility is to assist at worship services. And it's not just that the minister's voice gets tired if the minister's talking for an entire hour. It's also that it's good to have more than one voice. And it's also good to get the message across that it's not just ministers who are worthy to be, high on the whatever. None of us really believe that, and yet if the minister's the one who's up there doing everything week after week, that's the message. So they introduce they start worship as the prelude begins before the hour with a little message of some few sentences to help people quiet down. They light the chalice. They do the announcements. It used to be a board member that did the announcements, but what we discovered was people were unwilling to serve on the board because they didn't want to. And the bigger the congregation, the more intimidating it is to get up in front of all those people. And they say, it's hard for me to believe, but they say that public speaking is the scariest thing that most people ever do. Makes all kinds of make a world, right? So we said, hey, no, we'd rather have a little more control over the quality and the desire of people, and let the board be the board and make decisions and meet in small groups. So we gave the announcements to the lay worship leader. They read the reading. They announce the offering. They help to receive the offering. And they also do anything else that needs to be done that day. So if we are doing a walk around the garden with a rock in your hand meditation, then we need people to help with that. We deploy them for this. There are 10 people who do it every year. 1 at each service, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th Sundays of the month. So that if I'm a worship leader this year, then I might be 2nd service, 3rd Sunday of the month. If I'm going to be gone, of course, they trade around and so on. And this is all done using Google Docs so that we can keep it organized. And then the minister organizing the worship service then can just look and see, who do I send my reading to? They can just go to the Google Doc and look. So that's responsibility number 1. Responsibility number 2 is to take on the 10 to 12 Sundays that neither minister is speaking. 10 to 12 Sundays a year, and for which they're responsible for everything. And we call that worship coordinating. And so when there's a worship service that has been assigned to the worship team, they decide together what the theme is going to be. So this week, for instance, they decided together that we'd never done anything addressing issues of disability. And so they thought about how you could do that and who would speak. And in the end, it turned out that somebody's Rotary Club, they'd had this really fabulous speaker who was himself somewhat disabled and who had talked very compellingly to the Rotary Club. So that's when we send them that. What's the difference between a lecture and a sermon piece? And so they will work with the speaker, and then they do the whole service, unless they can dragoon somebody into doing something, which they often get one of the ministers or the intern to do the prayer.
And do you screen the themes at all, or do you just let it be?
I offer my advice. I go to all the meetings, And if I've got major qualms about what they're attempting, I'll tell them I've got major qualms. And, you know, in the written material, in my contract, or in the, you know, church's bylaws, it says that I'm in charge. So if I had major qualms, I could put the kibosh on things. But usually it's possible, planning enough in advance to kind of wend your way through without being too, without having to say, no, you may not do that, I say so. So mostly and actually this group, which is probably total of 18 people, many of whom have been on it for a long time. You can't be a worship leader year after year, but you can be on the team as long as you'll do something. They in some ways are more, I mean, they really, what I shared with you today about comfort and challenge, it was something that just kind of came out of my mouth at a worship meeting, as I was trying to explain to them why they shouldn't program the hymns where the words were exactly what was going with the theme, but the music was impossible to sing. Why you could do that once if you were careful, but you could not do that 3 times in one service. And then I started hearing them talking about comfort and challenge, and thought, oh, okay, this works. So then you've got the benefit of that. But in some ways, they're more, they're very focused on doing what they do well, really well, and they're a little bit more rigid about it than I would be. So mostly it's they themselves who are saying, this animal blessing service has just got to go, it's just too chaotic, there's nothing worshipful about it. I'm thinking, oh gosh, people love their pets. You know? We could tweak it and make it. So there's the 10 who are worship leaders. There's another 5 or 6 who are not worship leaders this year, but who will take on these special services and work on them. And then the other thing that the committee does is, you know, we get to thinking, you know, this sharing isn't working. What can we do to make it better? We'd like to greet each other, but it seems so disruptive when we do. What can we do to get people quiet? So they kind of offer a sounding board for me and a creativity pool.
So the worship leaders are a subset of the worship.
Well, it's the worship leaders this year. We change them every September.
But they always are part of.
Yes, if you're a worship leader this year, you're expected to be at every meeting that you're in town.
And how do you come to be on the committee or
anybody can join the committee who's willing to do one of those 3 things.
And how do you get to be a worship leader?
You come to the training, and you spend a year being mentored by an established worship leader. So, and they. They only get once a month to try at it in a big church. So the first Sunday you might just light the chalice. The choreography of a complex service is complex. Way too much for somebody to remember the first time. We don't even ask our interns who've been to seminary. We feather them in the same way. Do the chalice lighting this week. Next week do the chalice lighting and the offering. Next week give a try at the announcements. And then finally you preach and do some of those things the way that you're going to do them the rest of your career. But it takes a long time to work out and not be relying on a script. So by the end of the year, presumably they have become the person who's doing everything, and their mentor is watching and helping them do better and stuff like that.
Can I ask about the place of announcements in your worship services? This is our big sticky topic right now. What do you do? How long do they last?
Right. Someplace a long time ago, I read that no more than 10% of the time should be devoted to the business of the church, including welcoming visitors. So that's 6 minutes. And anything more than that is going to feel like, hey, I came here for something else, not for your institutional stuff. And so I caught on to that, and every time it's consistently started to drift into the 7 and 8 minute range, I've said, oops, guys, they say it should be no more than 6 minutes. So that's what we aim for.
And where, do you start with announcements or do you
okay.
end with announcements?
All right.
What?
There's a good case to be made for starting with announcements, ending announcements that way. And there's also the case we make is to put them in the middle. And that, So the ones who want it at the beginning or the end say, this is like the church's underwear. We don't want to show it at our worship service. We want it to be nicely covered up. And so we'll do it at the beginning and do it then. So the problem with doing it at the beginning is that people catch on to that quick and they don't come. They start getting later and later. The problem with doing it at the end is kind of hopefully there's been a kind of emotional thing and you lose, it's very anticlimactic.
You lose
So-
the mode,
Right.
mood in the moment.
In the middle. And here's what we think. I started talking about this morning. What are the announcements? The announcements are our welcome. The reason we do most of our announcements, and by the way, we don't do a lot of announcements because this is the worship cover.
And you reuse it.
We use that. And a lot of the stuff that you want to say to your visitors is in there week after week. Not this hard cover. And it has in it, tucked in it every week, it has the Sunday news, which is this, our little newspaper, and the order of service. So there's that kind of business stuff. But there are things that you want to say. If you don't remind people to turn off cell phones, you're going to have cell phones go off. And I don't want somebody's cell phone to go off, not only because I don't want to be interrupted, I don't want them embarrassed.
Mhm.
They get too embarrassed week after week in my church, they're not coming anymore. It doesn't feel good, even though they're the ones who caused it. So announcements provide welcome, which is to say hospitality. Well, you know what? Hospitality is a very spiritual word. There is a spirituality of hospitality that says, we're here for you, we welcome you with all our hearts, we want you to be comfortable, and because we want you to be comfortable, do turn off that cell phone, because we'd hate it if you were embarrassed. And this is where the worship, this is where the refreshments are, really, you are invited to that, please come, all that kind of stuff. The other thing is, that happens is in the announcement is kind of political. We're having a meeting. If you want to do this, here's how you do it. So that's the workings of democracy, and the workings of democracy are pretty deep too. So what we try and do is keep the announcement segment, and that announcement segment in our case includes two other things that we do. We have what we call pulpit editorials, which are 3-minute speeches by somebody in the congregation about something they care about. And
Like testimonials?
well, they can be testimonials. They're more often things that people want to say, I'm doing this, hope you'll do it too, but I'm doing this because I care so much. It's one of my religious values. One of the things I've learned in this church is the worth and dignity of every person, so I'm going to this march.
And do you write them before?
Yes, we do.
So you read the script?
I read the script.
Okay,
We read the script, and we have a similar sheet of instructions to say to people, this is not a maxi advertisement. This is a mini sermon.
good.
You can, of course, advertise your cause a little bit if you want to, but the main focus needs to be on your heart, your spirit, why this means so much to you, and it offers the congregation a chance to get to know its people and find out what they care about.
How often are those done?
So we have a slot in the worship called specials, and that includes new member welcome, the children's time when the kids are in, pulpit editorials, and also we have leadership moments, and leadership moments are things like it's pledge drive time. It's the leaders of the congregation say, they have their time. Nobody else can do that, only the congregation's leadership. So the board somebody on the board can do a leadership moment for the board, stewardship committee, the building committee did several. But they're really on the business of the church. But we keep them short, we coach them in being concise and getting their message across in a very effective way.
And do you recruit for things like the pulpit editorials, or do you just
No.
wait for them to come to you?
We wait for them to come. And so, you know, at most 3 times a month, because the kids are in, and then there's almost always something else, some holiday or something. There are Sundays in which no specials are allowed. Easter Sunday, no specials, or too much else going on. Mother's Day, the kids are in, you know, also. So it usually takes people a while to get on the schedule. And they do have, they're vetted in advance. We help people, we want them to be effective in getting their message across. Let's see. So, and those are the kinds of things also that the worship committee's kind of worked out at. It's the worship committee that comes with their, you know, all up in arms because their worship service got spoiled by a clumsy pulpit editorial. What are we going to do about this? Well, okay, so how could we have prevented that? What more instructions do people need? How can we help? You know, there's no point in getting people up there so that the congregation can be mad at them. That's not kind to anybody.
That's why we don't do joys and concerns, because we have one member who will stand up there, "You're all my brothers and my sisters," and she goes on and on and on and on about her own
Right.
things.
Yeah.
So we stopped that.
It's too bad. The
Yeah.
tyranny of the discombobulated.
Yeah.
So is that sounding board kind of role that the worship, what term do you use again?
The worship team.
Worship team. Is there an element of real intentional kind of cycles of feedback to kind of, I mean, they're kind of plants in the audience who, you know, well, we know we started on time, we didn't end on time, or this seemed to run long, or kind of monitoring those
Yeah,
parameters.
at the monthly meetings, we always go back over the last month's worship services and ask if people have noticed anything, comments. And of course, we're in a new sanctuary this year, and oh my gosh, I do now remember that I learned in seminary that architecture is everything. You know, this is like, I feel like I'm stomping around like a beginner. After 24 years in one space, to suddenly have a completely different space is very discombobulating. So we're using them a lot to say, how is this working? What now? It takes so long to get down to collect the offering. Should we continue to do that? The chancel is so far away. If we shouldn't do it, how else would we do it? So they're giving a lot of feedback this year.
Yeah, the point about architecture being everything. I pre-candidated in a place outside of Chicago. It's the Frank Lloyd Wright Church.
Oh yeah! Oh my gosh!
That was the most ridiculous experience of my life. I was like speaking to people all above me,
And below you. Right.
But I can tell you, as a person who attended it, it's fantastic.
To be there watching. Okay, to see ministers uncomfortable.
Can I ask, one of the things we've noticed at Summit just recently, it hadn't happened, I've been there 10 years, it's never happened before, that after the benediction we have the postlude, as do you, people start getting up and walking around.
No, so that's something that's something for the worship committee has to decide. In most congregations, of most denominations, the postlude is walking out music.
Yes, but for us, it's supposed to sit and listen.
Well,
and
if
for
you're-
the first time, we're noticing that people are,
You
we're like,
over and over.
sit down.
Oh, no,
Fine,
no,
right,
no,
it's
right.
just, and so how do you?
If we wanted, well, I would not, I myself would not want to die on that hill. But if you did want to die on that hill, you have to tell people. You have to start the prelude. You know, you have to end the sermon or the closing hymn. Please be seated now, and we'll enjoy the postlude.
We're having the opposite problem where we want people to leave and they're sitting. So I said, we're just not putting it there anymore. The benediction is now the last thing on the order
I
of
think
service.
our problem is that
So that
Vanessa
nobody
gives such a
anticipates.
beautiful benediction because she uses Forest Church's word and she does such a nice job that you really come out of it and then just sit down again and have.
Right.
We let them go to that, but it's just something that I do.
So you gotta work on that. I think, speaking of the emotional flow, sit down and listen is not what people are up for.
Yeah.
So, which is why I would not try and die on that hill. If I wanted more music in the service, I put the music that was going to be in the postlude earlier in the
This
service.
is awkward moment because she's given this fantastic benediction, And now she used to blow out the chalice and say, go in peace, and then she used to say, come join us for coffee. I mean, it's just this,
See, we extinguish,
Right.
do the benediction, and just go. I just walk to the mass.
It's also, the pianist starts playing the last hymn again in a quiet kind of contemplative way.
yeah.
So there's a little walking out music. We don't
Very
actually
often
have
we're standing, come join us for coffee, see y'all later, and it's just like,
Well, yeah, you gotta work that one out.
Too informal.
it doesn't feel right, you know?
Right. But then you have to, I mean, that's the kind of thing where you can have a thing in your order of service, you know, kind of like what I had on the screen here. We're experimenting now with putting more music in the service and not really doing a postlude. So as soon as the benediction is over, come on and join us for coffee.
Mhm.
But put that in, don't try and say that. You just put it in writing at the bottom of the order of service. And we're gonna try it for 6 months,
Yes.
and then we'll find out how y'all like it.
Good.
Maybe use the overhead, please remain seated until the postlude is
Well,
ended.
We have a little jewel box at the sanctuary, which is probably 100 years old next year.
There's not gonna be any
There's no
projector in
screens,
here.
there's no projector, there's no sound system.
So in the order of service, but it's across the board. People behave badly at the end. They think once the minister's spoken word is over, they can get up and go. And it's discourteous to the musicians.
Well,
In
it's
some
not,
sense.
yeah, I mean, so the stuff that they've really practiced, don't have them play it for the
At the
prayer.
end.
I mean, let them noodle around with something that they did once already, let them do it again, or just let the pianist play a little bit of a hymn, something like that.
Exit music.
Yeah, and the music that's been prepared, people aren't gonna listen to, so don't make them listen to it. Put it somewhere else where they wanna listen to it.
What are your worship stations?
So the reason I brought this, I just wanted to show you, this is this walking around the patio thing. But, so the Episcopalians in San Francisco have developed a kind of young adult, ADD-friendly worship service called Worship Stations. And that's this, that shows on this. And this is for, they do it for the whole service. So if you walk into this church in San Francisco, there's a great big, you know, welcome, we so love you, so glad you're here. You know, there's going to be, you can participate in a brief Eucharist service, the brief communion service on the hour and half hour between now and noon. You can walk the labyrinth. You can talk to a spiritual director. You can, so there's these options you have. Yes, right, exactly, right, and that's the exact group of people that it appeals to. The people who spent their classroom time going from center to center to center. So they do it for the whole time, which is, you know, we're
You mean you switch?
Yeah, so you pick three.
Yeah.
You pick 3 of the 6 offered, and that's what you do that morning. And you can kind of come when you want and leave when you're ready and do the things that you want to do. So, okay. For a sermon-centered outfit rather than a Eucharist-centered outfit, that's a little hard to do. So, but we've tried it, and to pretty good effect as an extended meditation time.
Do you have any of you have any informal dress code for your Sunday morning services?
We're pretty informal.
Do people show up in jeans?
Absolutely.
Is this to show up or to help with the worship?
No, in our congregation, people show up in jeans on Sunday morning, and I don't like it at all.
Feels
And-
a little disrespectful.
And even the
and informal.
minister, when he's not at the pulpit, if someone else is speaking and he comes in jeans.
Oh,
And
well,
to me, it's,
in that case, you're not going to solve this problem.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Now, our people are very nicely dressed if they're in pulpit, and the ministers will robe about 90% of the time. But people wear jeans or not. I mean, none of them are torn, but yeah, they wear jeans.
Anything short of a bathing suit.
Exactly.
So, you know, I think once upon a time, especially in rural and working America, when you were in your overalls, the same dirty overalls all week long on your tractor, you took your bath on Saturday night and you got dressed up on Sunday in the only suit you owned.
Yeah, I'm
And there was
still in that
something-
era.
In these days, it's a lot of people, and have you noticed this? the people most likely to wear a tie in this world are people at the car rental places.
Yes.
Whereas the people working in downtown offices are much more informally dressed than they used to. So it's a real change of, anyway, there's a real change of what people are wearing to work
Yeah.
and how important it is to the society that everybody be dressed in the same strata
Yeah.
of formalness. So, but if your minister is wearing jeans when he comes to church on his own, then the battle is lost. We do tell our worship associates and our choir
That they can.
that, we don't say what they can't do, we say what we would like them to do, which is dress 2 clicks nicer when you're up there presenting, and that's part of what makes this look important.
Right.
What makes it look important is that nobody's schlepping around in their Berkeys and their
Sure.
blue jeans.
Just looking ahead to the future, in Summit, we've talked a lot, we're not anywhere near trying it out, about a model that looks like worship for all and RE for all at the same time.
Mhm.
We're, but also thinking about the place of the sermon and wondering what happens to it. Do you have any?
Yeah, I think that's hard. I don't know how to do that. Once a year, I try and do, on the same Sunday we're going to start doing the blessing of the backpacks next year. What we've done for a long time is get the kids up and tell them how important it is that they've graduated to a new grade and how we're on their side for a good school year, and we give them pencils. Next year it's the backpacks. That's going to be much cooler. But and then I do a sermon for the 3rd grades and up on whatever the book of the year was. You know, it was Harry Potter for a long time. So I did a sermon on every Harry Potter book. And these were very popular sermons for everybody, actually, because the grandparents who didn't really want to read the whole Harry Potter, they wanted to know what the deal was with their grandchildren. So they would, the Hunger Games and the Harry Potter and the Star Wars. And there are often profound religious themes in those books and profound moral instruction in those kind of heroic stories for children. And it's hard. It's really hard to really, a sermon, even a 15-minute sermon, that will catch the attention of the 5th grade boy, I can't do that every week. And I'm not willing for the children to learn primarily from their experience with us that worship is boring.
Right.
I am just totally not. So we have the kids in, we do something especially for them, and we sing songs that they especially like, and then they go.
You said that they're in the service, you say 3 times a month? Once a month, and then...
I'd do it every week if I could, but that so interrupts the RE classes that...
And so the other ones, they're going straight to...
Or they might have chapel.
The children's chapel or youth chapel?
We're thinking about that. We have a DRU feeling nervous, but...
So they go straight to their rooms.
Yeah.
Is there, from you or on the websites or something, a list of good sermon topics? For those of us who have to give a lay sermon or something, if it's not based on some experience that's bubbling inside of us, is there a list of, we could develop a service over this topic or this topic or this topic? Is there any list of...
I think the UUA worship web is pretty good.
Well, but it's better on things like chalice lightings
Yeah,
and
sure.
meditations and prayers.
UU worship web.
So the UUA has plenty of sort of resources. So
On the UUA.
Yeah, UUA.org, one of the tabs.
Yeah, it's got a lot of stuff. And by the way, if you have a worship team and they write things, you should encourage them to post it.
Related to that, I had a question for you about, when you started doing the video, did you ever originally think that you'd just do an audio podcast without the
We had
video?
already done that. I mean, we didn't think we could sustain a worship service around just an audio podcast. Although this is where I got the idea, actually, because the church that I grew up in, River Road in Washington, D.C., was started that way with A. Powell days. And everybody knows that. And you know what? is the most successful outreach program we ever had, and you know what? It has never been
Yeah,
replicated.
yeah, that's.
It's like, hello,
Okay.
it worked.
Wasn't it the 11 congregations around the Beltway?
Right, almost all of which succeeded.
Are there 11?
Around the DC?
Well, they got started mostly
From All
by
Souls?
All Souls with a telephone hookup.
That's my home church.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting, that's, all right, okay.
Oh, I lived in Washington.
But so yours is the modern day parallel.
That was my idea.
Okay.
Then I discovered, and I had sort of had it for a while and thinking, I don't know how to invent such a thing. And then I heard this multi-site thing from the evangelicals and thought, okay, somebody's already invented it.
Hospitals, I just retired as a hospital chaplain. I think it'd be, because I had 7 days a week of services, and I had minimum of 3 services a day in my
Whoa.
chapel
Wow.
at Harlem Hospital.
That's a lot of worship.
Wow.
I had
Healing
had
services.
50 volunteer clergy
Oh, I see.
from all various faith walks. And so I said, if you're going to be a volunteer for me, you have to provide so many worship services a year. So I covered it. But it might be, the hospital doesn't want people in the hospital anymore. It might be interesting to have these services sent directly to the chaplain's office and have services available. So they could even take them to patients
Right.
in rooms, like.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something.
Yeah, now we've used our videos that way, taken them to our shut-ins.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, so exciting to me.
I think, for a hospital chaplaincy ministry, the regular old UU sermon preached that Sunday isn't.
Well, no, it has to be a UU sermon, maybe it's the UU Christian,
Well, not only
network
that,
or
but it's,
whatever.
I would think that, when I preach in the hospital chapel, I know that most people are hurting.
It's a healing.
It's a healing ministry. You keep it. Talk about the need for comfort.
Yeah.
Forget challenge.
No.
They got enough challenge
Yeah,
in their
yeah.
life. They need 100% comfort in
That's
the service stuff. Anyway, but in terms of themes, one thing you might look at is the fair number of ministers and churches that do video podcasting, because from those titles and from the sermon descriptions, you think, how would I do that? I've got a slightly different idea, and then you take off on that. Ministers do that all the time.
Yeah, I would tell you, feel free to look up our website. We have all our podcasts up. You're welcome to go by the preacher. There's gazillion names there. They're not. I don't think they're organized by topic, but if you search by topic, things might come up.
What's your website?
ucsummit.org.
ucsummit.org.
Also, if you go to YouTube and put in Unitarian Universalist Sermon, there are a lot of
All kinds of
podcast
stuff
sermons,
like that.
Oh.
video sermons.